Critics have been quick to slam the president's shift on Cuba. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, he's Cuban-American, he's standing by. But first I want to bring in another Cuban-American, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. She's a Republican from Florida, key member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us. The President of the United States believes this will help all Cubans. It'll improve the relationship and the oppression that 10 or 15 million Cubans now feel from their own regime will be eased as a result of what he decided to do today. You agree with him?
That is ludicrous. It is pathetic. What a myopic way of looking at the misery that engulfs Cuban society today. I would say that your CNN correspondent did a very good job of earning the right to be the only news bureau operating in Havana, because he did all the talking points that the regime would like to have. Mixed messages? Come on. There's a very strong message in Cuba, and that is that dissidents are not allowed to express their opinions, that there's only one political party that can exist, and that's the Communist Party, that there are no elections, there's no freedom of expression, there's no free press, that everything comes with a caveat. And you were saying about mixed messages about small businesses. What small business? Please, everything is owned by the Cuban regime, no matter how you want to twist it. This is really appeasing a dictatorial regime. We could have done this 4 years ago. We could have done this the day that poor Alan Gross was put into jail unjustly. And what the president did today is just insult our Cuban-American community. We want freedom and democracy to come to the Cuban people. This is not the way to get to it, Wolf.
Congresswoman, you make solid points. You make a bad point about Patrick Ottman. He's an excellent journalist. He was reporting what he saw on the streets of Cuba today, and it's unfair to say he's giving talking points. He's not giving talking points for the Cuban regime. He's an independent journalist. He's there. He's working hard. He speaks the language. He's been there for a long time. He knows what's going on. I don't want to have an argument over Patrick Ottman.
Okay.
What I do want you to do is explain why 50 years, this is the president's argument, for 50 years the United States has slapped this embargo on Cuba. You yourself say it's a disaster. Yes. The policy has not worked. It keeps being rejuvenated, if you will, but it doesn't work. The president says, let's try something else. What's wrong with that, since for 50 years it's been a disaster?
I will be glad to say it. And for all of those years that the United States has been the only country that has had the moral clarity of establishing that we do want to only do business with the folks who are going to respect human rights. Now, what has happened? Every other country in the world, there are about 190 plus countries. Every other country has been wheeling and dealing with the regime. Have those interactions brought the Cuban people any closer to freedom and democracy? You take that argument, you twist it on its head, and the same argument can be said. Exchanges, all of this currency going back and forth, telecommunications, has that improved the plight of the Cuban people? Again, the Cuban people are no freer today than they were the first day of the regime. In fact, there have been more arrests lately than ever. And now, when the CNN cameras are not going to be covering it, Fidel and Raul Castro will still be back to its old tricks. Wolf, we've been around the block enough to know that we have seen these supposed changes come about before. We've had the Black Spring in Cuba, where they jailed 75 dissidents, and then when the world wasn't looking, they went back to jailing some more. More things change. Nothing changes in Cuba, and you know that. And these changes only appease the Castro dictatorship. They don't help the human rights activists with whom I talk to all day today, and they are saddened that this has happened, because they say all of our sacrifices have been for naught.
So clearly you disagree with Pope Francis, who played a critically important role as an intermediary between the Obama administration and the Cuban regime. He welcomed this news today that the United States and Cuba were about to normalize relationship. You believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Pope Francis is wrong.
I believe that Pope Francis, along with all of the religious leaders of the world, have every right to express their opinion and to work for the unjustified jailing of Alan Gross. They were right to say, free him now. And I thank the Pope for everything he did. I thank all the Jewish leaders who worked for Alan Gross's release. He should have never been put in place, but to negotiate on Alan Gross's back and say that now Cuba is for sale. I think that that's wrong. I agree with Pope Francis. We would like to have a world where we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But, Wolf, there are some regimes that human rights violations are just so extreme. This is a regime that has killed U.S. citizens, that has killed U.S. residents, who jailed Alan Gross unjustly. And now to get Alan Gross's release, we have to negotiate and give away everything that we could share with a free and democratic Cuba. I think that we gave away too much, and I feel bad for all the human rights dissidents are suffering today and will be suffering tomorrow and still have no freedom. We did not help the Cuban people get freer today by this deal.
Ileana
I
Ros-Lehtinen.
welcome Alan Gross. I'm glad that he's home.
All of us are happy he's home, back here in the United States. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, key member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. She's a Republican.